In this video, I'm going to help you prepare for your final examination. Now I want to remind you, you should make sure you watch the midterm exam review so you pick up the main points from that so you can prepare and practice over the next few weeks to try to get better so that on your final exam you'll be in the best possible shape. Three concepts I want you to keep in mind for this final exam are politics, deliberation, and participation. And I'm going to give you a little bit more information as we go. So I want to give you the grading rubric first so you can think about it. The yellow bar here would be what an A+ student would do. So you're going to refer to the course materials to support your answers. You're going to use your own words consistent with your learning, so it's not going to be totally new and different than everything else you've been saying in this class. You've connected the problem, participation, and difference together, and you referred to evidence you collected through surveys. And so this is going to kind of be organizing and pulling everything together in a very logical way that's been consistent across the semester. For the B- to A range, depending on kind of how well you do this, you're probably going to paraphrase in a way that related to course materials, but you didn't refer to them directly, so it shows me you didn't quite understand them. You will generalize about participation, so you'll still be kind of using these platitudes that aren't really telling me much, and it won't really show me that you're developing learning over time. It'll seem as though you haven't quite processed the information in this class. Your conclusion will likely be unrealistic then. If you frame those two parts that way, then you're probably not going to have a very realistic conclusion, so you're probably going to say something that like everyone should get along, or everybody has a different opinion, or something like that, that again is not really showing me that you've learned much from this class. You've recognized the relational aspect of power, race, gender, and class, so you're starting to make sense of the system, and you're showing me that you don't necessarily understand the abstract ideals, but you're starting to understand it on a very practical level, so probably in your own life, and so you'll refer to those experiences. You will have probably referred to the work you're doing on the surveys, but you might not have fully followed that assignment, or you might be struggling with it. And so again, this will put you down into the B- to A range. For those of you who will get C's or C+, it will be because you've generalized political problems. You haven't been very specific. You haven't referred to the course materials. You kind of just talk about them generally. You referred to participation as purely a choice, so you made it like everyone has an equal choice, or it's like a video game. So you're not really showing me you've learned from the readings. You presented a general solution that fails to connect to the points you've made, and so it seems disconnected from kind of the argument you're making. And then you're really arguing that power is one-sided, so there's not much anyone can do, and so again, you haven't showed me that you've learned anything really from the class assignments and the materials. And then kind of similar in the F and C- range, you'll kind of stay in this as if you had never really taken this class at all and you haven't really learned anything. And so you'll still be thinking about political problems as unsolvable, or just people's opinions, or just the things that happen in the media. You probably also will copy someone else's work. You'll have copied and pasted from the internet, and so your conclusion won't make any logical sense. It won't connect to any of the other things you've said in class. And you'll probably continue to refer to power as a possession as opposed to being exercised through organized groups. And so basically on the top line here, this is what you want to be able to show me that you can do. So you want to think and prepare and plan ahead. And the A line again will be what you're able to do to get an A. Most of you will be in kind of this orange and pinkish category right now, and so you want to try to figure out how can you make better answers, maybe practice over the next few weeks, or write out some answers so that you can get into that A+ range. So I'm going to go through each of these columns now in order, just to give you a little bit more advice and what to look for as you're organizing your notes. So political problems, you want to remember, are defined by different experiences. And so you want to remember race, gender, and class, right? So if you have an opinion, it's going to be formed on your race, gender, and class experience and the stories you've told to yourself and to other people about what that experience is. That's naturally going to be different from other people. And so you see this happening out in this graphic over here to the right, is that what people define themselves out tends to match which political party that they think they're a part of. And so it's not true all the time, but these are the numbers of people within that group that identify with either the Democrats or the Republicans. So you want to think about how race, gender, and class shapes your idea of what you think the political problem is and why those would be different. And then you want to think about organized politics and the stories they tell. So the Republicans and the Democrats have very well practiced, rehearsed stories that they tell all the time, and they're trying to get you to believe in those stories too, about what you think or what they think you should think the problem is, so that they can provide the political solution that fits within their ideology, the way they see the world. And this is, of course, portrayed through the media and social media. And so you want to think about the role that that plays on what the stories are that people tell about what they think the political problems are. And then I gave you 3 examples in class that you're still looking at now, and now you're finding more evidence about. But you think of the defunding and destabilizing narratives of both the insurrectionists and the Black Lives Matter movement. You think about the climate crisis and capitalism, where these things are in contrast with each other. They really both can't be true at the same time. You can't continue to grow and grow and grow without using natural resources. And so you see this kind of conflict here in the political parties on what they're going to support. Which one are they going for? The climate, they're going to try to protect the climate, or they're going to try to protect never-ending growth. And then finally, there's critical thought and social control. So what people are able to think about and how the government or how certain groups are trying to control society and get them to think very different things. And so I've given you some examples here to help you find your research and also have some evidence to support your participation idea. And so participation here, as we want to think about, is not equal. And so again, not everyone gets to play in the game. And the other thing you want to think about is that the people who enforce the rules, the people who are most participating in the system through the political parties, are older white evangelical men. And so they have a lot more sway or influence over the system because of that. And then you have to keep in mind the historical struggles that you learned about women, African Americans and black people, poor people, and more the young are oftentimes, just completely excluded, or they're pushed out, or they're not listened to. And so you want to think about participation in that sense. And then again, going back to race, gender, and class, you want to think about how that matters, as well as educational level, like how much education the person has. So you want to see this all as a political struggle then. And so right now, at this particular moment in time, about 100 million Americans are for the right. They support the ideas of the Republicans and mostly the extreme opinions. And then it's the same thing on the left. There's about 100 million Americans who are for the left and kind of the very extreme of those ideas. Now, this is, of course, sensible because these two extremes are, right in each other's faces right now, as this picture kind of shows. And so people are kind of generally saying, well, I guess I have to pick a side. Which side am I going to pick? But there are about 100 million people who are not participating. They're confused, and so they would really make a huge difference, and you might be one of these people. If they got more involved in politics, they could either separate these two sides and present a middle way, a compromise, a way for people to get along, or they could join one of the two sides, or they could start a third side. And so you just want to think about what would American society be like if this 100 million of confused people were to get more involved. And so in this is the reality, right? So this isn't what we want the world to be or what we wish it was. This is what it is. And so your logical solution that you put forward, your proposition about participatory politics in the United States, it has to really, in order to be logical, has to be one of two things. It either needs to reform the system, you're going to make a change, like maybe you get rid of the filibuster or something like that, or you have to say that, it's time for civil war. We're going to have to exit this system, and so we're going to have a violent insurrection, and we're going to go to war to solve this, or you're exiting the system through some kind of very major social change like the civil rights movement. And so those are kind of three logical solutions that you could put forward. And so that's really how you want to be thinking about this. It can't be like everybody's going to get along. That's not logical, and it's unrealistic. Now, the last few weeks here, you're going to be working on your own to collect evidence. And so you're kind of just really now getting ready for the final exam, because collecting evidence and showing your kind of what your support is for your positions is really the main point of this class, and what the college really wants me to be able to teach you is how to use reliable evidence from credible sources to back up kind of what your main proposition is. And in this particular case, it's about participation in politics. So the easiest way when you do this, and what I've asked you to do in the assignment in Blackboard for this week, is to just go ahead and use your social media, or talk to some family or friends, or in the workplace, right? Just get some information from real people about these problems and how they see them. And so the advice that I give you is basically ask as simple a question as you possibly can. Don't try to make your questions super complicated. Just try to get them to start thinking and talking about one of the problems that we've talked about in class. Give enough time for people to answer, right? So don't ask them to do it in 5 minutes and get back to you. Give them, I'm giving you a few weeks here, so give them a few weeks to respond. And you'll need to remind people to answer, just like I sometimes have to remind you to complete assignments. Then ask them a question also about which political party, are they one of the pro-left, pro-right? Are they confused? How do they kind of see their role here? And often ask them how often they participate. And remember, participation isn't just voting. So it could be, getting involved in some local organization in their neighborhood. It could be donating to a charity. It could be marching. It could be protesting. It could be volunteering. Right? There's all different ways of participation. So you want to hear, like, what is it? Are they invested in this political system? How involved are they? That kind of thing. After you've gotten these answers, what you want to do is try to look for a common theme. What are these people saying about the political system? Are they all saying the same thing? Are they saying something that's majorly different from each other? And really just try to get an idea of, like, what does this say about politics in the United States? Like, what does this tell you about the system? And then you want to see how does that match up to your proposition about participation in politics? Does it undermine it? Does it give it credibility? Does it strengthen your position, right? It doesn't really matter if it strengthens it or weakens it. It's just that you're able to do this, that you're showing me that evidence can be applied to your proposition. That's the main point. And so I just want to have you think about then the discussion board as a good time to learn from each other. So for example, I was just looking today, and there's a couple posts on climate change, and look how the problem with these two individuals, two of your peers, is different based on either time and or geography. So where in the world are we talking about? Are we talking about the Caribbean? Are we talking about the Northeast? Are we talking about India, right? It's going to have an influence on how you see the political problem. And then also time. Are we talking about in the next 10 years? Are we talking about in the next 50 years, right? And so people will look at it differently. And so try to learn from those viewpoints. Neither one of these answers is right and the other is wrong. They're both providing different evidence to support a different viewpoint. And so the key is that they're bringing evidence to support their viewpoint. And so that's kind of what you want to be thinking about. Then you want to think about which political party is out there and trying to get your vote, right? So you present this information. Which of the parties is really agreeing with you and trying to say, if you think this, then vote for me? Which one is saying that? And if you can't find one in the United States, then I encourage you to look at other countries and see if you can find a political party in one of those countries that is speaking to you and is saying, you should be voting with us. The other thing is that you might be in the confused group, right? You might, through this work, you might realize that, you don't really know where you fit in the system. And I really want you at that point to think about, well, what does that say about participation in the United States system, right? If there's so many confused people, what can we really do about that? Where does education come in? And maybe start thinking critically about media. Is that helping or hurting? And so you want to just have some ideas about that again, you want to generate through the discussion board. And you should really start to state your own positionality here. You should start to talk about who you are. So talk about, why does your experience influence the way you see politics? This should be your chance to start doing that and engaging with each other. And then again, just to remind you that for an A+, you will have referred to course materials to support your evidence, your work. You will have used your own words consistent with your learning. You will have connected the political problem, participation in politics, and then you'll show that difference and different experiences is what informs this. And then you'll refer to evidence that you collected throughout your surveys in order to get your A+. So I just want to give everybody an opportunity to be able to do that. And again, you have a few weeks to prepare, so please do probably watch this more than once.